Since the start of the pandemic, there's been a significant rise in both house prices and rental cost. And quite honestly, it kind of sucks. Look, from 2020 to 2023, asking rents jumped approximately 24%, while home prices soared by 37.5%. The median sales price for existing homes climbed from $283,000 just before the pandemic to $375,400 in March of 2023. And if you look at this chart by Visual Capitalist, what you'll see is the cost to buy has had periods of being above the average rental cost and periods below, typically following recessions. But then you see a significant rise just after 2021, especially as mortgage rates are now around 7%, the highest since the 1980s. This led to a recent question that I got, and the question was, what would you do today if you were faced with having to buy or rent? Would you do one or the other? Well, this is a rather complicated question, and there are a few key points that we need to consider before we decide to buy that house or cancel our lease agreement. Look, I paid off my mortgage 2 years ago after I realized that monthly mortgage payment was actually holding me back from achieving my financial independence goals. Now, without a mortgage, I can take that extra cost that was haunting me at the end of every single month and apply that extra money toward investing. But there's a key difference here, and some of you have called me out on previous videos, and I appreciate it because, see, the difference between buying a house pre-pandemic and buying a house today is actually significantly different. So to answer this question, we need to look at what is happening today, not what has happened in the past. Now to start, let's go back to Visual Capitalist. What a great website. And take a look at this image. Now, this beautiful chart that they provided, it's beautiful, of course, but it's also factually scary. See, I remember my parents talking about how bad mortgage interest rates were back in the 1980s. And they weren't entirely wrong either. See, in the early 80s, the mortgage interest rate was a whopping 16.6%. And by the end of the decade, it was around 10.32%. But see, the benefit back then is that the income, the salary, the annual income of everyday people was a lot closer to the average cost or even the median cost of a home. Take a look at this, 1984, we're talking about a price to income ratio of 3.5. Remember that number, 3.5. That is a median income of $22,400 a year when home prices were only $78,200. Now let's put that in today's numbers with inflation. If you would account for that number in today's dollars, that would mean your annual income was $67,336 with a home price of $235,075. And that right there is the key point that I'd be considering right now if I was in the market to move and buy a house or rent a house. See, when I bought my house in 2017, the price was just slightly over $235,000. And I was at a point in my income where that ratio was 3.5, which means, in my opinion, a house right now, to be fair value, should be right around $235,000 or maybe $300,000. No, but as of 2024, the median home price, get ready for this, is a whopping $400,000. That is double, basically, $200,000, right? That's just absolutely absurd. And that's actually down from the year 2022, where the median cost was $433,000, and the median household income was only $74,600. Now, let's take a look at that. That's very important, because on this chart from Visual Capitalist, you'll see that is a 5.8 price to income ratio. Remember that number I said earlier, 3.5? So there's no wonder that people today are complaining about people in the 1980s. Whether you call them boomers or whatever you may call them, their price to income ratio on buying a house was significantly less than today. Even I would say 2017 was significantly less than today. So if you're asking me, Bob, would you buy a home in 2024? Here's my answer. Are you ready? Absolutely freaking not. I would actually wait until the cost of the home would recede or get my income up. But, we could easily say income should go up, blah, blah, blah. But let's be real right now. What's more likely going to happen? Are we going to see a housing crisis where the house prices go down? Or are we going to see this big boom where everybody's salary goes to the moon? Let's be real. It's probably going to be housing crash before people get a significant salary. And on top of that, if you've been following recent news, we know that the Fed is trying to combat inflation. And how they do that, they raise the federal rate. And right now, they're actually looking at raising it even more here in the year 2024. So if they continue to get hawkish, which means raising the rates up to combat the inflation, that's only going to mean that mortgage interest prices continue to go up. That is key though, because what could happen is if we approach an 8% mortgage rate, let alone a 9% or even more, the interest of buying houses will continue to go down. And guess what that means? Housing prices may actually start to recede from that $400,000, maybe down to more reasonable level. Now, this does vary based on your location. Before you go and you comment and say, well, $300,000, I live in California. Well, it's a little bit different out in that land. Let's talk about it actually. In fact, in California, the median income is $91,551 today, with a median home price of $860,000. Holy crap. That is a staggering 9.4 price to income ratio. Yikes. But if you compare that to the 80s in California, check this out. So in the 80s, income was right around $23,620 and home prices in California were $82,800. Still a lot of money for back then, but guess what? That is only a 3.51 price to income ratio. So even in California, it's soared up more than the median across the United States. So certainly if you're in California, if you're looking to move to California, very, very difficult to buy a house, especially considering average income and median income. So if we consider the current market that we're dealing with that I just shared with you, I would hold and I would go out and find a decent place to rent, whether that's an apartment or a house, something decent. And then I would focus on building up enough money to put a down payment once the housing market cools off a bit. I truly believe we're in a bubble, and I don't care if you disagree with me or not. Let's just see what happens over the next couple years, and we can circle back to this video and see if I was wrong, in which case you can put the clown emoji down in the comments, not today, but in the future. Or I was right, and how about we do a crown emoji down in the comments? But here's the thing. When you rent a house, especially in today's market, it's so much better than buying. Because even though you could say, well, if you look at visual capitalists, look at this chart. Okay, rent prices are still high. Yes, of course, buying a home is still higher, but you're throwing your money away with rent. But remember, there's some hidden costs that people don't always realize. With a house, you have to pay property tax, you have to pay house insurance, you have to deal with the toilets when they break, you have to deal with the stupid roof when it needs replaced, you got to deal with the hot water heater when it breaks, and all the other dumb things that happen when you are a landlord and own your own home. See, if you're a renter, the landlord has to deal with all the BS. You don't. So in that case, you actually do save money. It's all that hidden sneaky costs that sneak up on you when you decide to sign those mortgage documents and buy your home. And of course, even if you pay in all cash, you're still stuck with those hidden costs, whether you have a mortgage or not. We need to see the Federal Reserve stay steady to get the inflation rate under control and then see a little bit of a cooling off of this housing market. And if you look at this past week, as of the recording of this video, even if you're watching well into the future, it doesn't matter, because in this moment right now that I'm recording this video, they came out with a lot of bad news this past week. And take a look at the S&P 500. Could this be the sign of continuing times? Now that's bad for the stock market. That's bad for our investments, but could potentially be good if you're in the housing market looking for a future potential of buying a home, because that could help eventually lower rates. Once we start seeing a little bit of a recession downward, that's going to help. And then hopefully we can see some improvements. And yes, that means, in other words, today, if you want to buy a house, things suck. We're going to have to do the thing about biting the bullet. But see, I'm not just here talking on a YouTube video. I've actually been through this before, believe it or not. And it's a story I haven't shared yet. So let me share it. Yeah, this exact thing happened to me, which, it was in the 2006 housing bubble. Take a look at the graph right here. It was in 2006. I bought a home during the housing bubble. Now, back then, the price to income ratio was 5.14, and my house was $200,000, which was just below that median home price of $247,000. Now, I didn't know that we were in a bubble when I was buying my house, because at that time, I was not watching Bob Sharpe on YouTube. But in any case, I bought the house, not realizing what was going on in the economical factors. And here comes the housing reset. Of course, the Great Recession was stacked on top of that, but I saw my house value go from $200,000 down to $85,000 during 2009. So my plan to upgrade within like 5 years of when we bought was completely tarnished. I had to wait until 2017 when the market kind of settled down to be able to sell that house and be able to upgrade. Could we see that happen again today? I don't know. Possibly. With the rate of what things are looking like overall, in the statistics. Values are up really high on average home price sales. Meanwhile, the Federal Reserve is trying to attack inflation. And as they continue to attack inflation, that does eventually lead to potential recession, job loss, but the benefit of that is housing prices will stabilize and come back down. So while I would wait for the market to settle a bit, not to repeat my 2006 mistake, if I was in the market right now, here's what I'd be doing in the background as I paid my monthly rent to the landlord. Number one, when we look at buying a house, get our target in mind of what we want. What kind of house we want, and we're going to keep an eye on the prices. Right now, how much does the style of home that you want go for today? So if you want like a 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 square foot home, or even something smaller, like 1,000 square feet, look at how much that costs today, wherever you live and wherever you want to live, and then we're going to keep an eye on that price and see if it goes down over time. That's the beauty of that, but you're going to assess your budget. Number one, consider your gross monthly income that you make. And that's a key factor of how much you can afford to spend on the mortgage each month when you achieve your desired price of the house. Now, lenders do not like to have a debt to income ratio for anybody that is more than 36%. So you need to calculate your DTI today by dividing your monthly debt payments by your gross monthly income. Look at your student loan, your car loan, and everything else that you have for debt. Do that calculation, and then you can see, are you even in the range to be able to get a mortgage today as it stands? If not, start working on paying off some of that extra debt so you can be free and clear for when the mortgage comes up and you're going to look like a rock star and be able to get approved for the lowest possible rate at the time that you decide to buy your house. Number two, let's calculate the down payment and start saving for the down payment. Right now, interest rates in savings accounts are so nice at 4%, 5%, maybe even a little bit more coming up here soon. And a down payment could be where we stash away money, earn some interest, and get ready for a down payment on the house. In order to get rid of the worst thing in the world, which is called PMI, stands for private mortgage insurance, we need to have a down payment of 20% or more. So calculate what your desired home value should be. So if you're going to go for that $235,000 home, 20% down payment is what you're going to want to save up for to eliminate PMI. The last thing, and I've done this a couple times with PMI, it's the worst thing because all that does is tax on an extra $100, $200, even $500 onto your monthly mortgage payment, and it doesn't even benefit you. The PMI only benefits the lender. It's private mortgage insurance in case you default on your mortgage. And knowing that you're an awesome person will do everything in your power to never default on your mortgage, you're basically throwing money away to the PMI. And you can avoid that by saving up now for a down payment while we weather the storm that's approaching. Number three is estimate your mortgage payments. Use a mortgage calculator to estimate your monthly payments, which will include principal, interest, taxes, and insurance. This helps you understand how much you might spend monthly relative to your income. And I'll include a link down below to some great mortgage calculators that you can try out for yourself. Number four, of course, I talked about those ownership costs. There's home ownership costs that sneak up on you, so make sure you consider that. First of all, your property tax and home insurance, making sure that the local property taxes aren't too high for where you want to go, or that you're in an area that you can afford a higher home insurance, such as California, if you're in a big earthquake zone, or in Florida with the hurricanes. Just look around to make sure that you can balance whatever that home insurance cost may be. You also want to set aside funds once you do buy the house for ongoing maintenance so you can take care of those nagging things like the hot water heater that decides to break, or the stupid laundry machine that stops working, or whatever may happen. Set aside about 1% to 2% per month so you can have the maintenance costs to not have to worry and stress out if those stupid things happen to you. Because guess what? They're going to happen. So let's get a pre-approval for the mortgage once we're ready. Now, this is a little bit more as you're tracking your dream home. And again, dream home means your general square footage. It's not, don't get set on one particular house. Look at your overall goal, your vision, but don't set on one particular house. So let's say you're aiming for like a 3,000 square foot house, and you're watching that, and all of a sudden the price is down to where you're like, hey, that's a good one. It gets my price to income somewhere in the 3.5 to 4.0 ratio. I'm happy. I'm going to go for it. Well, now what we need to do is get pre-approved for the mortgage. So hopefully you have your 20% down payment already secured. And before shopping for that home, get it pre-approved by a lender. And that can help you understand exactly how much you can afford. And it demonstrates to the seller when you go in and say, hey, I want to buy your home. And oh, by the way, I'm already pre-approved for a mortgage. That makes you have a little bit of a leg up, especially if it does become another buyer's market. When you're already pre-approved, it gets rid of so much time wasted and allows you to put an offer on a home quickly. So if you do find one that you like, once you're ready, boom, you're in there and you're ready to go. And you're not wasting time while somebody else already got pre-approved. They get the house and you're like, oh crap, now I got to look around. I really wanted that house. Oh man. Don't let that happen to you. Get pre-approved as soon as you can. The last one is consider your closing costs. These things are awful and I wish they didn't exist, but they do. So we got to deal with them. These are fees and expenses to pay and finalize the mortgage. It can range from anywhere from 2 to 5% of the loan amount. So include that in your initial budgeting because that's important and that's another sneaky cost that comes with home ownership. But see, here's the thing. Right now, I wouldn't buy a home. But if you take those 7 steps and you start with number 1 and you're building up to number 7, once it's time to buy a house, man, you're going to look so good. And hopefully the prices will be a little bit more favorable to your income. But remember, this isn't direct financial advice. You go out there and do whatever the you want to do. I hope you enjoyed it. Check out this video next. We'll see you on the next video.